What can I tell about Mwalimu Nyerere? Mwalimu Nyerere was a teacher. He got his title as Mwalimu from the fact that he was a classroom teacher. But to me, he was more than a classroom teacher. He was an educator who cared about the education of the people. His vision was that you needed to educate not only children in the classroom, but all the people needed to get some education, dependent on the issues that were emanating at the time. Because at one time when the first 5-year plan was being introduced in '69, he said that it's important to consider the education of adults, because for him, the adults were the people who were concerned with production, development of the nation. Children would take years before they joined the activities in the economic and social development of the people. So first educate the adult and make sure that you involve the adult throughout the preparations of development plans and implementation. For me, I've learned a lot from Mwalimu. I had the chance to work with him as his Minister of Development, Human Resource Development, as Minister of Education, and finally, he was my Chancellor when I was Vice Chancellor of the university. But all the time, I looked at Mwalimu as an inspirer, because he got what he wanted through questions, but also through advising people what to do. And he was somebody who was not shy to say anything that he thought was important for that particular occasion. He was an advisor to many, many people. I remember one time accompanying him to Zimbabwe, and he was going there for the first time when he was going to receive his honorary degree from the University of Harare, yes. Now there, at the dinner reception, he warned Mugabe. He said, don't follow everything that you see in the African continent from other countries. Take your own decisions. But I would advise you that you should not nationalize what you have seen here, because you are inheriting a country which is not a third world country. You are inheriting a country that is moving towards fully developed countries like Europe. You had the structure for industry, agriculture, education that was superb in the Southern Africa. So, and to him, that was direct. And Mugabe said yes, but soon after his death, he just took over a different route, and we know how Mugabe has ended. He advised even Saddam Hussein, yes. He advised him not to launch any war against Iran. I accompanied the president to Iraq. And while we were there, Saddam Hussein said he was tired with Iran because they were controlling a large part of his oil fields. And he wanted to fight him because he wanted his property. Mwalimu said, do you know what you are talking about? Have you studied the strength of your enemy? He said, no, it will take me 7 days to reach their capital. The Mwalimu said, no, how many people will have died in those 7 days? Stop it. And he warned him, he said, what you said is going to be seven days is going to be 7 years, and I believe it is going to be 8 years, and this is what it was. So he was a man free to advise anybody. And in fact, Saddam Hussein admitted that he wanted him to help him go over the issue of Iran because he was controlling the field, and he wanted Mwalimu to join him in a joint communique to castigate the Israeli, that they were killing the Arabs. Mwalimu said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not the one to do it. But he advised him to join the president of, or the chairman of OAU to do it if he wanted. But he said, Mwalimu, you are recognized in the world. Any statement from you will be taken seriously by America, Britain, and so on and so forth. So Mwalimu was recognized by the world that he was an authority in many cases. But Mwalimu said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he refused. We learned that the trip to Iraq was to go and receive a gift of oil. You remember we had only come out of the war against Idi Amin. That was in '79. And Mwalimu met Saddam Hussein in Jamaica, where they had gone for a non-aligned movement summit. And he said, you come to my country, I'll give you a gift of oil. But it was discovered in the end that it wasn't going to be a free gift. He was supposed to buy by accepting the request that he should cut against Iran and Israel. So Mwalimu said, no, I'm not going to do that. When Saddam said, so I'm not going to give you the oil, he said, that's your own oil, but I'm not going to bow down to you. You can do it yourself. If you want the OAU to do it, go to OAU, but I'm not going to stand in for OAU, which means humility. He knew that there was somebody in authority. He wouldn't subject himself to an authority that he wasn't due for. So Mwalimu was an advisor to many countries. He was also concerned with the fight for independence for the African continent. And you all know that he was the chairperson of the freedom fighters in the whole of Southern Africa. And without him, I don't think those Southern African countries would have become independent so fast as they did. So this is the Mwalimu that I knew. But he was an advisor to many. And it was a pleasure to work with him because he was a world-renowned leader. What was the vision of Mwalimu Nyerere for Tanzania? The first thing that comes to my mind was that any development should involve the people, because no one can develop anybody. People can only develop themselves if they know and they have been initiated in how to plan, translate plans into action, to activities. And so the first was that involve the nation, the people themselves, in development planning and in the participation in the activities towards developing the implementing the plan. Mwalimu was fond of involving the people in anything that he wanted to do. First, he prepared them through public rallies, and every time he was in a public rally, he was a teacher, educating them for the purpose that he was trying to put into action in the country. And Mwalimu wanted that education should be for helping the people to realize, to discover what they need to do in order to save themselves from calamities. And so there was nothing that he tried to do without involving the people. Each time there was a policy to be introduced, he used to travel around the country to speak to the people. And only when they had understood that he took on the implementation programs. What you see around now is reviving what Mwalimu had planned, had been advocating. The Stigler's Gorge, for example, which is now coming into implementation program, was decided by Mwalimu many years before he died. The Selu and all these wildlife sanctuaries, they were all decided by Mwalimu long time ago. And so what legacy has he left behind? I say what we are seeing now is actually reviving the programs that Mwalimu had planned many years ago. Now, the one thing that I feel very proud of, the present regime, whatever they do, they mention back, saying, this is not new, this is old, because Mwalimu had planned the Stigler's Gorge many years ago. This is not new, because the plan was there, except that we did not implement, which is a recognition of Mwalimu's vision in the development of this country. Maybe I should ask, what can you show me which is not attached to what Mwalimu had said many years ago? Because his plan was that Tanzania should be involved, and the people should be involved in development. But we looked at the plans, we clapped, we shelved them. And now they are looking back at the plans, they are reviving them. So I think the legacy is there, that Mwalimu was the founder of all these projects that are now being taken into action. For example, the construction of industries in the country. What are they doing? They are reviving those that were constructed under his regime. So, I don't know whether I can say much more than that. But the one thing that I can say, he was a vision maker fellow. He is a chap who looked far ahead, much more ahead than we, all the followers, were able to cope with him. His thinking was too advanced. And that's why people say the Americans were afraid of him, the British were afraid of him, and he told them sometimes when they threatened to withdraw aid, he said, you can go to hell with your aid, but I'll take my course. He was shrewd, he was upright, and he was a defined fellow who could stand up in the public and make his point without saying this is going to hurt somebody. So that's what I think is the legacy. People accept now that he was a good leader. He was a good leader. And even if the people, the countries around, if they don't recognize the work, the good job that was done by Mwalimu, but we see the signs that each country is independent. They come here for advice. And now they are getting, even our president now is becoming now a fellow who is much wanted by people in the East African context. So, and it's a legacy that has been inherited from Mwalimu, I believe. It's very difficult to pinpoint any special area that remains in my mind. There are a lot of things that remain in my mind. Now, one thing that I know, Mwalimu was very much fond of people's lives, very concerned. You remember that in Mwalimu's regime, only 3 people were executed. Only 3. In the 25 years, only 3 were executed. Now, one was because he had decided that he would make money by killing his wife. He was a nation. He would buy the insurance for his wife, then a few months later, drive her or to Lindi or to Njombe on a trip, and then dump them somewhere, kill them on the route. He killed 2. And Mwalimu said, no, we cannot tolerate this, because this is depriving people of their lives and their living, their families, and so on. And so those were executed. And the third was the one who killed the regional commissioner in Iringa. Yes, that was the first, and the other 2 came much later. But after that, no one. And it is said sometimes that there was a time when the Chief Justice went to see Mwalimu, presenting a case that the jails were full of people who were supposed to be hanged, and they were not hanged. Mwalimu just responded very vividly. If you think it is an easy job, you go and hang them, sign and hang them. Until he retired. he turned away from killing people. And even the question of the war against Idi Amin, he was hesitant to start it on, and this was from his own mouth when he was talking to his cabinet. He hesitated to start that war because he was afraid of seeing multitude of people dying because of the war. So he did it only later on, when he thought that people in Uganda were dying in mass. But otherwise, it was not fun. When he advised Saddam Hussein, he was talking of how many people are going to be killed. So, concern of people's concern. Now, this is, to me, it is historic in the country. Historic, that people will remember as a good gesture of Mwalimu in this country. I believe there are a lot of lessons we can learn. One, if you want to be a good leader, you have to be an upright person. Not one that threatens people, but one that whatever he says, he's an example himself. For example, in the question of behavior, stability in the country, respect. You are a president, you have to respect your people. You are a minister, you have to respect your people, and so on and so forth. So this one is one of the things that I think is important, that I have learned from him. 2, I've learned from him that if you want to get with the people, get involved. Do not use tricky means to get what you want, but be a partner. Be a partner. And a leader should be a leader in everything, even in behavior. So that's what I've learned from Mwalimu. But the other, that, well, we're human, but you can do better if you have the fear of God. That I can see. For example, out of his own mouth, he said he went to start a war after he had been given an inspiration in church where he was attending a service at St. Peter's Osebay, that now Idi Amin is going ahead killing a lot of people. You go in. So he went in. Now, otherwise, the war would have taken a long time, like with the help of God. We got through in a very short period. So uprightness, devotion to the Creator is important. It's important. No matter however we want to be independent, I think our independence should not override the love to God. He was a Catholic, a devout Christian. You could see that he was anti-corruption. You could see that he did not want the government to, the government departments to mess around with things when it came to human life. And he was somebody that valued humanity, that valued the life of people. And the fact that he did not want to start war early because he was afraid that many people would be killed where there was no reason why they should die. And that's why he advised Saddam Hussein not to start the war, because he told him, even if only 25 people will die, innocent people would have lost their lives for nothing. So he was a staunch Catholic. And you should know that he was baptized when he was already fully grown up. Even though when he smiled, he showed his meno mchongo, lakini that was displaying his humility, his love for the people. So, no, Mwalimu first. I think the title Mwalimu is a good name for him, or title for him, because he actually was a teacher. He used to teach even his fellow presidents wherever they met. So he was a great teacher. And you should realize that thousands of people in different countries have earned their PhDs on Mwalimu's speeches and books and journal documents. So Mwalimu is the appropriate, I don't know whether you call it a jargon name or whatever, for him.